So, Browns have had a very interesting 4 years, especially with the end of this year, going back to the playoffs for the second time in these 4 years. 2 different quarterbacks at the helm each time. But the Browns have a thing where they got a quarterback that we kind of like, a quarterback that we kind of don't like, and a quarterback that we love. Let's start off with the quarterback we kind of liked. That was Baker Mayfield. You know, when Baker Mayfield was here, it was kind of like 50-50, maybe 60-40 on who liked him, who didn't like him. Talent-wise, a lot of, he was better than what we had. He did take us to the playoffs and looked pretty good. He got us pretty far in the playoffs, at least to the divisional round, which we hadn't been to in about 20 years. He went through a Freddie Kitchens fiasco, but then he got Stefanski and a good GM and excuse me, a low cold. But he went through a fiasco with Freddie Kitchens and came in with a good coach this time, was Kevin Stefanski, was able to get us to the playoffs. But eventually Baker the ceiling was kind of there. We seen that with Kansas City. I know he was young, but he couldn't beat Chad Henne for a playoff game and would have sent us to the AFC Championship. Kind of was having some attitude problems behind the scenes. A lot of people kind of was not liking his personality at that time, a little bit cocky, which doesn't rub Cleveland well. Cleveland doesn't really like the cocky attitudes, especially when you're new on the field or new to the city and everything. It's a Cleveland thing. So we had to move off of Baker. And then this is where everything kind of fell apart for the fan base. Because now we moved to like a more of a 70-30, maybe even 80-20 about the quarterback we kind of don't like as a fan base. We got Deshaun Watson. And everybody was mad. A lot of people thought this was a bad move. Deshaun Watson. Now, what they'll tell you is that when we got Deshaun Watson, that we made a bust. But you have to remember a few things about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson was considered the next best quarterback in the league. He was the highest paid quarterback in the league. And until he said that he wanted out of Houston because he didn't like the way that they were running things and he felt they're a little bit racially biased. You can look into it if you want and see what that was about. Then we know right after that, allegations came out. You can read into that if you want. I've done stories on it. You can check me. I've tried to give you as much fact as I could on it. But fans weren't really happy, and he did something that pissed off a lot of the NFL owners. Our owner, Jim Haslam, gave the green light on signing him to a $230 million guaranteed check. And the media came back and told you this killed our franchise. This was way too much money to guarantee. This is not basketball. You don't pay a quarterback that. This will kill your franchise, yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, a year or two later, Joe Burrow signs. He gets $218 million in guaranteed money. Justin Herbert gets $218 in guaranteed money. Nobody's saying a thing. Saying nothing. And then we got a quarterback who we kind of love. The fan base fell in love almost instantly. Wacko for Flacco. Joe Flacco comes in the scene, everybody, and he starts throwing for 300 yards. And people say, oh, this is what the offense is supposed to look like. Yeah, he did. He was throwing for 300 yards a game and got us some wins and helped us get into the playoffs. But what people didn't pay attention to is that while he was throwing for 300 yards, our running game took a dramatic hit. All of a sudden, we're not running the ball as well. We were already having problems with turnovers. We actually skyrocketed when Joe Flacco took the field. We'll overlook it. Because you got to remember, nobody or a lot of people in the stands didn't like Watson. So as long as we don't have to deal with Watson, we'll like whatever. That's what a lot of fans' opinions was, and they were showing it throughout the year. Deshaun Watson win games is not enough. You need to pass for 300 yards. Well, Flacco passed for 300 yards in the playoffs. He also cost us that playoff game. 14 points in less than a minute is what he gave to the Houston Texans. We all knew he could throw interceptions, but he threw 2 pick sixes. He threw 2 interceptions per game since he came here. Those 2 pick sixes killed our team. And then to add insult to injury, after we lost that game and what many thought we or would say we got shredded or exposed, Baker Mayfield, now the Tampa Bay's leading man, set them up for maybe winning an Oscar. He goes out there and shows a magnificent performance. He dog walks the Philadelphia Eagles, the defending NFC champions, who everybody kind of seen was faltering, but he outplays Jalen Hurts. He sent 32-9. I mean, why did we not keep Mayfield? Well, we didn't keep Mayfield for the same reason that we lost with Joe Flacco. See, Mayfield is great. If the offense is clicking and everything is perfect and you get out there and you get 10 or 14 points going, Mayfield will take you to the promised land that game. But if there's some adversity, he'll throw some picks. Joe Flacco did the same thing in the playoff game. There was some adversity. He started forcing the ball. He's not athletic enough to run away from the defense when they put the pressure on. Threw 2 pick sixes in less than a minute. And had plenty of opportunities to get the offense back down the field and score. Could not do it. And in that game, in that playoff game, when we were down, and a lot of people saying, the defense quit, because everything that everybody remembered was, remember when we played Baltimore and we was down 17-31? And remember how the defense came back and helped us win that game? Because they can't give credit to where credit is due. Deshaun Watson is the reason we won that game. Deshaun Watson is the reason that we were 7-4 when Joe Flacco took over. Deshaun Watson had already won us some games. He only has one loss. Joe Flacco came into a good deal at the end of the season. All of the tough teams was already beat. He just had to finish out the season, which is what he did. See, we didn't love Baker the way that people are screaming now until we got Watson and decided we didn't really like him that much as a fan base. And we didn't really love Flacco until he came in and could throw 300 yards. The one thing that the media and everybody else would tell you Watson was not doing, because that's the only thing they could really point out. And we kind of don't like Deshaun Watson for a reason as a fan base. Not me personally, but as a fan base. And if you look at these 3 quarterbacks, and if you look at the stories that they had, and if you look at the ways that they entered into the Browns, one of these things is not like the other. And that's the reason the fan base does not like Deshaun Watson. Some of you might think it's going in one direction, and it's not. The Cleveland Browns fan base is financially discriminatory. The reason that nobody likes Deshaun Watson is because he's making $230 million. The reason they love Baker Mayfield is because he's no longer with us, and you're seeing the success he's having in a weaker division. He wouldn't do that here. If you took the Browns and put them in the NFC South, we would have won that division and probably had 13 or 14 wins this year. And the reason people love Flacco when he came in is because he could show everybody that Watson is not worth the money. He could show everybody what a true champion looks like because he's won a Super Bowl. And it didn't cost us anything. You see, the one thing that Baker Mayfield and Flacco have in common is they didn't cost us any money. We got the results for not having to pay any money. What people don't understand is that had we kept Baker Mayfield, that same $200+ million you're complaining about for Deshaun Watson is what Baker Mayfield wanted. Baker Mayfield did not want the offer the Browns gave him, the evaluation they had on him. He said, that's too low. I bet on myself. And now he's been betting on himself every year. And maybe this year he'll get a contract. I don't think it's going to be $230 million, but maybe he'll get some stability. You can blame the defense for losing the playoffs. You can say that the defense is the reason we won all of regular season games. You can say that Deshaun Watson is not worth the money that we paid him. But what Deshaun has shown you is that when the chips were down, out of all 3 of these quarterbacks, he's the only one who went perfect in the second half, did not make the critical mistakes, and won us a game against a top-ranked competitor. Some people think they're going to the Super Bowl today, and that's the Baltimore Ravens. Baker Mayfield and Flacco, while fine, are bridge quarterbacks at this point. Somebody good to come in and help stabilize the team. But the future, if you want to win in the NFL, is that you have to have talent at the quarterback position. You know who didn't throw for 300 yards? C.J. Stroud. Didn't stop his team from winning because his defense stepped up on the errors of our quarterback, Joe Flacco, who gave them 14 points when we were already down 10 in a playoff game. Now, when we were down 31-17 against Baltimore, Deshaun did not give them another 14 points. Deshaun made critical plays and closed that gap. He showed you the difference between having a quarterback who you can win with and having a quarterback who can win you games.